You're listening to the Toolstation Western League podcast with Ian Knockholds and Tom Hiscott.
Welcome, listeners, to Episode 18 of the Toolstation Western League podcast with me, Ian Knockholds, and I am delighted to be joined on the line by the editor of the Western League Bulletin. It is Tom Hiscott. Tom, how are you?
Yeah, not doing too bad, thanks. How about yourself?
Well, I'm very well. Are you feeling festive?
Just about, I think. Yeah, trees up, a few lights here and there. Trying to get into the mood if I can. Yeah, I'd say I'm just about getting there.
Well, I can beat that.
Go on.
I saw none other than Father Christmas at the weekend.
So you've beaten me. I've not seen him yet.
Well, quite bizarrely, I've seen him on a number of occasions now. Yes, he
Following
was.
him.
The last time I saw him was last night in Shrivenham.
Okay.
When he made an appearance at the annual singing around the Christmas tree. But earlier in the week, he was appearing at Laycock Abbey. I caught up with him there. I'd love to say I got an interview with him for the Western League podcast.
I thought that's where you were going then.
Well, but I did have a little chat with him. Because he's a big fan of Western League football. And he's a great believer in wearing his colours. And that's when I found out that, like myself, he's a big Devizes Town fan.
Wow.
But his wife was there, of course, Mrs. Claus, and she wears a lot of green and white. And we had a chat, and I thought she was probably a Welton Rovers fan, but apparently it's Westbury.
Okay.
They don't they don't let it sort of bother them. Throughout the year, it's not an unfriendly rivalry. They don't bicker. They want both sides to do well, which of course is very much in keeping with the family ethos of the Western League. But I did ask him about his interest in football, and he said that he had for a period been involved in football management, but unfortunately it wasn't as successful as you might think. Have you got any ideas why that might be?
Not off the top of my head. You're gonna have to tell me.
Well, it's because he keeps on getting the sack.
Well, hey, badum.
You like that? That was a huge build-up, wasn't it, to a very small payoff. But the Christmas theme is one that I hope we're going to be looking forward to over the next edition of the podcast, because of course we are building up to our Boxing Day games, which regular listeners will know I get very excited about. We have got our two managerial interviews for you. This week we're speaking to the manager of Chipping Sodbury Town, and we're also speaking to the Bishop of Lydeard. It is, of course, Brett Andrews, the Bishop Lydeard manager. So we've got those coming up in this edition of the podcast. But we're going to start by looking back at the football on Saturday, the 14th of December. Another weather-hit schedule, Tom. So that gives us an opportunity to take quite a comprehensive look through the fixture list.
Yeah, back to the old days where we go through every match. Unfortunately, only 10 taking place on Saturday. I think it was 6 in the Premier and 4 in the first. But as you say, yeah, we get to look at all of them, which is a positive, I guess, for those fans that had games on Saturday afternoon.
Absolutely, and the fixture list's loss was the attendance's gain, wasn't it? And we start with a big attendance. In fact, it was very nearly the biggest attendance of the weekend. It was Bridport taking on Exmouth Town, and this game going with the form guide, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. Exmouth continuing to climb up the table. I think they're up to 4th now, following this win. Pretty easy afternoon for them, I think, away at Bridport. 9 points off top spot with a couple of games in hand, in fact. So Exmouth going great guns at the moment. It was a pair of goals from Jordan Harris and then also a Mark Lever goal led them to a 3-1 victory away at Bridport.
Now another 3-figure attendance, and the home side Clevedon Town took on Roman Glass St George, and this was a tight affair.
It was, and decided at the death. Pretty dramatic game. Started in the very opening minute with Troy Simpson giving Roman Glass the earliest of leads, but Clevedon, the home side, were afforded the chance to hit back pretty much instantly. A 4th minute penalty for them, but Sid Camper, one of their reliable performers usually, he fired his penalty over the crossbar, so it remained 1-0 to Roman Glass. But then midway through the second half, Clevedon did eventually get back on level terms, and it was Lucas Vowles, their top scorer this season. He's amongst the leaders in the Premier Division, and he managed to find the back of the net to level things up. And then into stoppage time, and Clevedon, another penalty for them. Jay Murray fouled in the box, and this time it was Zach Drew who took over penalty duties, and he was successful from the spot, giving Clevedon dramatic come from behind 2-1 victory.
Hallen are a side, of course, we've been talking a lot about in recent weeks over the on the podcast, not least because of their excellent form. On this occasion, their good form had something of a mallet taken to it.
Yeah, indeed. Hallen have been, going great guns of recent times. But they did, they suffered a 3-1 defeat at home to Shepton Mallet on Saturday afternoon. They did go ahead. Martin Stoll finding the back of the net, but Matt Mallet managed to get back on level terms just before the interval with Conrad Peck heading home an Andy Martin corner. And then it was Mallet who pushed on after the break. Daryl Charman scoring from close range to put them 2-1 up. And then in the closing stages on the counter-attack, it was Aaron Sevier who tapped home to make it 3-1. So, giving Mallet their third win on the bounce, a form team themselves.
Now, Street have got to be one of the hardest teams to beat in the Western League. They came up against Bitton, whose form this season probably is not what many Western League watchers would have expected. So it's hardly surprising that this was a very tight affair, Tom.
Oh, incredibly so. I mean, just one goal between them, and it came literally in the final minutes in stoppage time, and it was Harrison Kite scoring the only goal, giving Bitton a slender 1-0 win away at Street. As you say, a really, really tough nut to crack, and they'll be disappointed they weren't able to hold out for a draw.
Now, the next game is arguably the game of the day, a 7-goal thriller, very much a game of two halves between the powerhouse that is Tavistock and a side really that they should have blown away, but very nearly didn't. It was Chipping Sodbury Town. This
came from nowhere. Obviously, the final result going Tavistock's way, a 4-3 victory for them at home to Chipping Sodbury, but it looked very much like that wouldn't be the case for much of the match. Chipping Sodbury really in a good position. They were 3-1 up with less than 10 minutes left. 10 minutes left on the clock, looking towards a really important victory for them. But Tavistock, credit to them, managed to come back and somehow grab all 3 points. Jordan Anir halving the deficit for them to make it 3-2. Josh Grant then firing home the equaliser, and then unfortunately for Chipping Sodbury, Tavistock had another attack, and it fell to Anir again. He fired home their fourth and claimed a 4-3 win for Tavistock at home to Chipping Sodbury.
Well, I'm delighted to welcome for the first time to the Tool Station Western League podcast, it's Scott Gibson, Director of Football and Joint First Team Manager at Chipping Sodbury Town. Scott, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us on the podcast. Because this is the first time we've spoken to you, I was wondering, could you tell us a little bit about your footballing journey to the Chipping Sodbury dugout?
Yeah, sure. My journey has been in football for over 30 years, playing for numerous clubs in the Bristol District, the Combination League, and I played in the County League a few times. And I went into management towards the end of my career, and I was quite successful in my first attempt, managing South Gloss reserves, and then I was asked by Chipping Sodbury Football Club if I wished to come along to them and manage their reserves, which I did for a few years, and then I was upgraded then to the first team and ran the first team in the County League for a while, and after doing that 3 years of saving them from relegation because we had all sorts of problems, ended up being made the head manager, director of football, and since then I've been managing all 5 teams at the football club for the past several years.
Because it's been a difficult period for you. I mean, we're going to talk about, obviously, the football on the pitch, which is really what the podcast is about. But, I mean, people who watch the Western League closely will know that, of course, at the beginning of this season, you were scheduled to be playing in the Hellenic League. Ultimately, you successfully appealed against the decision to laterally move you, and are competing, obviously, in the Western League Premier Division this season. But what sort of effect did that have on you and the club and the teams that represent the club?
Massively. Out of the 2 leagues, the biggest prize of what players look at, which they wish to play under, is the Western League Prem. That's the main one at this neck of the woods. Unfortunately, when it all went right that we were playing in the Hellenic, which it was at that point, a lot of players were thinking of leaving. The motivation of everybody went down the pan a bit. I looked at it in a different view. I thought if we're going to try and get into the Southern League, because that is what the club's ambition is, I thought it would have been an easier route to go in there, and deep down it is a little bit less travelling, but the Western League is more attractive. So when we were getting into that position, you could see the heads were dropping, and certain people said they would leave if we were going to be in the Hellenic. So I will say, yes, it did damage us a little bit.
Well, let's concentrate on how things have been going recently in the league. And of course, you had a fantastic, I say fantastic, I'm sure for the impartial observer it was fantastic. You must have been biting your nails. But a very epic encounter with Tavistock on the weekend, and a game of two halves, I think it would be fair to say.
Yes, it was certainly a game of two halves. I mean, they did score the goal in about the first 4 minutes. Unfortunately, straight off a corner, and you think, here we go again, because we're not. The position where we are in the league, you don't get a lot of luck. And when they say you don't get luck, you don't get luck. And unfortunately, it was a bit of a blunder, and the goal went in and went 1-0. They went 1-0 up. Then we managed to respond off that on the 9th minute. By a lovely goal on the outside of the box, made it 1-0, and we actually absolutely dominated the game, totally. Our attacking force was brilliant, and before we knew it, we were 2-1 up at half-time. Could have been 4-1 easily, but then the second half came out. We did end up carrying on from where we left off on the first half, and then we went 3-1 up, and the game should have been done and dusted. Unfortunately, the team at the moment we're struggling with injuries, and we had 2 injuries actually on the pitch. On the last 11 minutes. And unfortunately, the substitute we had at the time has got a chest infection, so we were against the wind. They put the pressure on because we hurt them, going 3-1 up at their place, and they decided to go all at it with 2 injuries on the pitch. And we didn't have the resources to replace that, to make the substitutions, because unfortunately we had 2 players that were due to come on the minibus. Literally 10 minutes before we left, phoned in sick. So, going down with one substitute with a chest infection isn't going to help when you get 2 injuries on the pitch. So, unfortunately, that's where the result comes through. But the one thing I can say out of that, the players were absolutely outstanding. They proved they can play at this level. And we have turned the tide in the last 4 games. We've actually turned the tide, and they look very good. The only problem is literally lack of substitutions that cost us the game. Now,
we are going to talk about your recent run of form, because, as you say, things have certainly picked up for you. But you had a very difficult November, didn't you? And when I say that, I mean you played Plymouth Parkway away, you had another league game with Tavistock, and you also played Halland. So 3 of the sides that have been doing very well in the Premier Division this season, you came up against. I mean, in some respects, when we look at your position in the league table, did you look at those fixtures and think, "Oh my God, I can't. How are we going to get anything from this?" Or did you think actually it was a challenge for your players to prove what they could achieve?
Yeah, not at all. It was a challenge. I have every faith in our players. I mean, unfortunately for us, is literally 2 weeks before the season started, the management of our team left, and we also lost 8 players from the last season's squad last minute. So that's 2 weeks before the season started. So Justin and I had to literally pull players in from pillar to post, and we knew it was going to be difficult. And we're using our league games practically as friendlies to try and find out who's who and what's what. And we managed to attract a nice group of players that's come in now. And I have to be honest, in the last 4 games, they started to click. So when I was looking at these teams, I didn't fear them. It's a good challenge, but you'd probably say, "Oh, crumbs, we might not get anything here," but we do up our game. And the Plymouth game, for example, we lost it really in the first half, but the second half we won it 2-0. And we literally did dominate that second half. So the players are definitely there, but I would say now, literally in the last 4 games, it's like Halland. We should have had a result out of Halland. Unfortunately, we had one of our centre-backs that was sent off near the end, associated professional foul. They had a penalty, equalised, and then next minute we hit the post. Would have made it 3-2, but unfortunately they managed to go and get one in the last minute of the game and got a defeat. Same with the Tavistock game. So all these games that we have played, we've just got better and better and better. And now I would say we are there. So I would certainly say in the next few weeks under our fixtures over the Christmas period, and especially in the new year, we'll definitely be off that table. If we won Saturday, which we should have won against Tavistock, we would have been literally 4 places back up. So it's literally one win away before we get off that bottom spot.
And of course, we shouldn't forget that you did get that win, didn't you? After those difficult matches that we've just talked about, and obviously, I know we've already reflected on the disappointment of Saturday, but you did beat Odd Down recently, and that was away at their ground. Now, I know that they're one of the teams that's around about you, but how important for the confidence of the players was that win?
Massively. We knew if we weren't going to go and get a result there. We knew we were going to be in trouble. But getting that win, I won the faith in, and I don't like rubbing this in, but at the end of the day, 2-1, us winning 2-1 did flatter Odd Down. The first half, we were just absolutely unbelievable. We should have been 3-4 up easily by then. But the confidence, that gave us a real big confidence boost with the lads, and it just showed them you can compete, guys, at this level, and they certainly did. And as I said, most teams that we speak to, especially Tavistock, came up to us and they even said, how did they win that? They couldn't believe it. And a lot of teams like Hallen as well said, what are you doing on the bottom of the table? The way you're playing and everything else, I just can't believe you're on the bottom of the table. And we're on the bottom of the table for one reason. Obviously, we haven't been good enough up to the start of the season. When you're on the bottom, you don't get a lot of luck. You do not get a lot of luck at all. And unfortunately, you've got to try and put that behind you, be positive and go forward. And that is what's going to happen to us.
In recent interviews, one of the themes that have come out of talking to some of the managers in the league is they talk about leagues within leagues. I suppose it's a theory that we take from professional football as well as in the grassroots game. And there is a cluster of clubs, isn't there, at the bottom of the Premier Division? Obviously yourselves, Odd Down, Wellington and Bridport. Do you think it's going to be one of those four that you're going to be fighting it out with come the end of the season for to get off the bottom of the table?
Definitely not. I will say, and I know they'll probably say, here we go, another typical manager thinking, being 100%, and I am 100%, but the way we're playing now, as I said, we've clicked. We've gone past all these trying different players out, trying different systems, etc. We found the correct system now. And everybody's firing on there, and I do feel sorry for the lads because, like I said, the one against Tavistock, everybody was so deflated they just couldn't believe that we were 3-1 up, absolutely battering them, and then getting nothing out of it at the end of the day. So I would definitely say by January we'll be out of that bottom four, and we'll start going up through the table because all the teams I've seen so far haven't really impressed me. They haven't. We've given them a game on, and we're just getting better and better. So I would certainly say watch this space. We had the same problem last season. We started off really bad, poor, because the manager at the time, again, he stepped down, and I had to take over again for a short period, and we appointed Joe White and Steve White into the management, and we managed to finish 10th in the end. But I would certainly say Chipping Sodbury Town Football Club has certainly bounced back at that league table with no doubt where they should be.
Now, you've not got a game now until December the 28th. How do you feel about that? Do you view that as a positive or a negative?
I think it's a negative because at the moment I feel that we are on fire. We do have a game tonight, or obviously Tuesday night, which is in the GFA Cup against Titherington. So we do have a derby tonight, which I'm looking forward to. But that is really take the pressure off the lads and make them a bit more relaxed. Obviously, we still want to win, but I want to take the pressure off them and get them to enjoy their game. Yes, just when you get the lads to that peak, that level, yes, I'm quite disappointed, for that gap. But the other thing is we do have injuries at the moment, and we have got quite a few, which doesn't help our situation. So in another way, it'd be good to let those players have a little bit of a rest and get over their injuries and make sure we start 100% in the next game.
Well, the next game is going to be in the league, at least, Roman Glass. And now I know that they beat you comprehensively at their place, so you owe them one, don't you?
We certainly do. And the other thing is that's where most of our players went at the beginning of the season, to Roman Glass. So there's certainly a score to settle with them. But, I mean, I'm not bitter. All I want is just the 3 points. We don't play that well on artificial pitches. It's quite difficult. You have to get used to that. At the end of the day, getting 3 points against them, and I would say it's positive because they've slipped up a few times. And that's what I love about the Western League, because anybody could beat anybody. You can have the top of the league and suddenly come across someone like ourselves or Bridport, whichever, and you're going to get a shock result.
Scott, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to the podcast. I look forward to catching up with you later in the season. It'll be fascinating to see whether your renaissance can continue and whether you can move the side off the bottom of the table. Fortunately, I think relegation in the Premier Division isn't going to be quite as clear-cut as it has been in previous seasons, so there really is everything to play for, and more importantly,
Absolutely.
every point to play for.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you.
Now, our final game in the Premier Division on Saturday the 14th of December was the game that I was at, albeit only for 45 minutes. It was Westbury United against Cribbs, and I missed that goal, that goal, Tom, so can you tell me all about it?
I can do my best. So, yeah, it was Cribbs who managed to snatch the 1-0 victory away at Westbury. Both sides really quite similar records, sitting in mid-table, so it wasn't a surprise that it was a tight game, and it was, one goal. It was Harry Horton. I think he's recently joined Cribbs, so it looks like a decent signing. And it was a long-range effort. I think 35 yards is what I'm reading. So pretty impressive goal from Harry. And give Cribbs a 1-0 win away at West.
No, I mean, despite the fact there was only one goal in that game, and I missed it. I went along with my daughter Betty, and whilst I was trying to sort of wrangle her so she didn't either run on the pitch or just cause general damage around the clubhouse, I did manage to catch a fair bit of the game, and I must say that I was impressed with Westbury. I know they've not been on the greatest run of results recently, and it's looking like it's going to be a difficult Christmas for them. But actually, they played some really nice stuff, really eye-catching stuff, and certainly for the football that I was able to watch, I thoroughly enjoyed it, even though there wasn't any goals on display. And I also have to say credit where it's due to Cribbs, because they were very well organised, which is something, of course, we've come to expect of them over the years, and they certainly play their part in keeping Westbury out. So two evenly matched sides there, and as I say, a good advert for Western League football. I did thoroughly enjoy myself, as I always do when I go and see the White Horsemen.
If you're thinking, Tool Station, I know they'll save me money, but do they have all the top brands? You know, DeWalt, Makita, Einhell, Stanley, Myra, Kudox, Nest and Santex. Yeah, they do. Over 15,000 trade quality products in the range from the leading brands with prices that are hard to beat. If you want a helping hand to save on your next job, try Toolstation. With over 300 branches, there's always a Toolstation near you.
Now we'll take a look at the results in the First Division. Only 4 to talk about. Plenty of goals on offer at Lebec United. The visitors were the Green Army.
Yeah, Green Army coming unstuck in this one. Lebec absolutely storming out the blocks in the first half, and eventually winning 4-1. But this game was pretty much over by half-time, and it was goal-scoring doubles from both Shah Bakerd and then Cameron Brown as well. So another good result for Lebec, beating Welton 4-1.
Now the next game was the one that I was keeping the closest eye on Twitter. As of course was Father Christmas, as we heard earlier in the podcast, because it was Devizes Town. They travelled down to Dorset, they travelled to Sherborne Town, and for a long time, Tom, this game looked pretty close.
It did, and Devizes obviously towards the wrong end of the table, unlike their hosts, and it was they who went ahead. Rob Mitchell heading them into a 7th minute lead, following a 1-2 on the edge of the box with Jordan Anning. But the Zebras did manage to come back into it, and it was 4 different goal scorers for them, eventually giving them a 4-1 win. But as you say, very much in the balance for much of the game. Alex Murphy continuing his excellent run. He managed to get on the score sheet, and there was also goals from Dan Newlands, Josh Williams, and then late on Joe Smith added the 4th. And as I say, a 4-1 win for Sherborne, and a return for winning ways for them, which was much needed.
Excellent stuff. Now, I very nearly went to this game, but I didn't need to worry too much about adding to the attendance because it was the biggest of the day. 133 saw Warminster Town take on Portishead, and I think I'm right in saying that the Wiltshire side very nearly had a bit of a shock on their hands in this one.
Yeah, I hope those that did go stayed to the final whistle, because another game and with plenty of late drama. Portishead leading for the majority of this game. Callum Eastwood, a deflected effort, looping over the Warminster keeper to put the away side into the lead in the 36th minute, and they held on to that until the 89th minute when Warminster awarded a penalty, and Ian Jeffrey managed to slam the ball home and looked like he'd rescued a point. The home side managed to push on and managed to force home another goal, incredibly in stoppage time, and it was an own goal, unfortunately. I think it was George Parsons putting the ball into his own net, and giving Warminster a 2-1 victory, but very unlikely as it seemed for much of the game.
And our final game on Saturday the 14th of December in the First Division was Wells City against Almondsbury. Wells had lost some ground to some of the front runners in the First Division, but they still remain a very difficult side to beat, unbeaten in their last 6, and it was another 3 points for the Somerset side on Saturday. Yeah,
tight affair, but they did manage to gain the 3 points, a 1-0 win at home to Almondsbury, taking advantage of a couple of sides around them not playing, so they've moved up a little bit in the table as well. And it was Ross Padfield scoring the only goal of this game, a close range effort midway through the second half, leading them to victory over Almondsbury.
Well, I'm delighted to welcome back to the Toolstation Western League podcast Brett Andrews, the manager of Bishops Lydeard. Brett, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. No game this weekend, so we've got a chance to talk about your game with Wincanton, and that was a match where your side were very much at the races.
Very much so, yes, and about time. We've been sort of promising to sort of put in a performance like that for several weeks now, so yeah, very pleased.
So your game this weekend against Radstock, that one was postponed. I mean, how frustrating was that for you? Because of course you've been on a good run of results, 3 games unbeaten. So, I mean, that would have proved a real test for your side, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we were very much looking forward to going to Radstock and extending, hopefully, to 4 games unbeaten, which would have, hopefully pushed us further up the league. And really, some of the performances we put in of late would warrant us to be at least a few places higher than we are now.
Yeah, because you're 13th at the moment, aren't you? But I mean, the league is quite congested, particularly in the mid-table. So, how do you feel that 13th position at the moment reflects the way that your team has started this season?
Well, it's a true reflection because we have lost some disappointing games where we've been on top and just not taken our chances and capitalised and being punished. So the table never lies, but yeah, slightly disappointed because based on performance, I feel we could be higher. Certainly will be aiming to go higher.
Well, that sort of leads me on to the next question, really, about what your aspirations were for this season, because at the moment you find yourself 8 points off the top 4, and of course it's going to be the top 4 in the First Division that earn themselves promotion this season because of the FA's reorganisation. So was a top 4 finish something that you and the club had considered going into this season?
Well, we always consider trying to be in the top sort of 6. I think it's the top 6 to get you FA Cup qualification, which we've never done as a club yet. So top 6, top 5 is always a target. And with the quality of some of the players I've got there's no reason why that can't be achieved.
So which teams do you think, perhaps some of the sides that you've come up against yourselves this season, which sides do you think will be challenging at the top of the table?
It's hard to say at the moment because we haven't played Longwell Green, who are up around the top of the table. Quite difficult at this moment in time. I think it's quite an open league this year, and any side that puts together a good run of victories, and I think will see themselves up challenging.
Now, I mean, I know you had earlier this season, you had a difficult result against Warminster. Warminster were one of the fancied sides earlier, but their form has been very sort of in and out, which I think probably a lot of First Division sides have found as well. So, I mean, does that just indicate that perhaps any side from any part of the table can go on a run and challenge at the top of the table this season?
You see that most seasons, to be honest with you. Anybody that puts together a decent run will tend to challenge. We've been hampered quite seriously with injuries at the start of this season, so that explains some of our inconsistency, and I would imagine others have probably suffered the same.
Now then, we'll take a look at the fixture that's coming up this weekend, and it's the Battle of the Bishops. Now, as you know from our previous conversations, this is something that I get very excited about. But am I the only one? Is this actually is this a game that you and the fans look out for every season?
No, not at all. Just you, Ian, I think.
Oh well, never mind. You've got Cheddar, I see, on Boxing Day. Would that be? Would they be your natural rivals, or is there another side that perhaps Lydeard sort of rival locally in Somerset?
Well, I guess Cheddar's probably the closest now, with Wellington being in the division above, and Street being in the division above. So, yeah, Cheddar's probably our most local, and a game we'll be looking forward to on Boxing Day.
It's going to be an interesting festive period for you, isn't it? Obviously, we've got that game against Cheddar. Then you've got Welton Rovers coming up, and then after that, Longwell Green. So plenty of competitive action and plenty of strong opposition for you over the festive period.
Yep, looking forward to all of them.
Do you think that the festive period is going to be crucial to your season? I mean, do you see that perhaps sides will start, as those games start coming thick and fast, do you think it's important to pick up as many points as possible? Or do you think that perhaps this sort of the inconsistency we've been seeing and the congested nature of the table is something that's going to continue for the next few months?
I think any side that starts to put together a series of wins will move up the table, and generally speaking, if you can do that over the Christmas and the early part of January, you set yourself up for a decent sort of run in towards the end of the season, and hopefully that's where we'll be, and challenging higher up the table towards, sort of February, March time.
Excellent. Brett, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to the podcast. It will be fascinating to catch up with you later in the season to see how you're getting on and to see whether that run of form, that good run of form you're on at the moment, has been able to continue.
Excellent stuff. Now, of course, we have a look at the up-and-coming fixtures. We won't dwell too much on the midweek games, although there are a few games on Tuesday and Wednesday to keep an eye on. Well, hopefully the weather will be kind to us, but equally we hope the weather will be kind to us on Saturday, the 21st of December. We'll start in the Premier Division as we always do. Tom, which game has caught your eye?
I think we can define this as a big one. We've got Exmouth Town hosting Plymouth Parkway, 4th versus 2nd. And the first of a number of Devon derbies around the sort of Christmas period. And we've got the best defence in the league in Exmouth. Have conceded only 8 league goals, taking on the best attack of Plymouth Parkway, who've got 57 they've scored. So, something's got to give. Absolutely fascinating to see how this one turns out.
That is the very definition of the irresistible force meeting the immovable
Absolutely.
object.
Yeah, can't wait.
And the game I'm going to go for is Shepton Mallet. Of course, we heard about their win earlier in the podcast. They take on high-flying Clevedon Town, who've been in great form as well. So I think that will be a thoroughly entertaining and competitive affair there down in Shepton in Somerset. Now, moving on to the First Division, Tom, which game have you called out here?
I've gone for Wales City against Longwell Green. We obviously mentioned Wales. I think they've got a 6-match unbeaten run going in the league now, and they take on a Longwell Green side, obviously sit top, and have won 8 league games on the bounce before their draw last Saturday against Sherborne. So 2 teams, pretty good form, top 5, and should be a good affair. And Wales pretty good home side, I think. So tough afternoon maybe for our league leaders in the First Division.
Now, the game that I will be going to is Devizes Town, my hometown club, of course. They take on Radstock Town. That's a 2 o'clock kickoff. So some wonderful to see some old friends from Radstock and, of course, some new friends from Devizes. And I think I'll have both girls with me for that one. So I'll have my hands full. I'll probably be watching even less of the football than I normally do, but it'll be great to catch up with some great friends from the Western League there. But I'm not going to pick that as my pick of the day because that would be entirely self-indulgent. I am going to go for... Well, I don't even know whether it's a thing, but it really interests me. It is the Bishops of Lydeard taking on the Bishops of Sutton. Bishops Lydeard, of course, against Bishop Sutton on Saturday in the First Division. So there we go. Right then, that's enough. That's enough babble from me. Tom, we're going to take a look at the league tables going into the Christmas period. Interesting to see how these change over the coming weeks with plenty of football, hopefully, if it meets the weather. How are things looking at the top of the Premier Division?
So it's tightening up. We've got Bradford leading the way, 15 league games they've played so far. They've won 13 of those and they've got 40 points. So they're the first team to the 40-point mark this season. We've then got Plymouth Parkway, who's at second. They've got a game in hand on Bradford and they're on 37 with a much superior goal difference. So win their game in hand, they would go top. Clevedon, a couple of wins recently. They've played 18 matches, so quite a few more than most of their rivals, and they've got 35 points. And then you've got Exmouth, who we've mentioned a little bit, 13 games played, so 5 less than Clevedon. They're on 31 points. Bridgewater 16 games played, they're also on 31 points, and Hallen, who've played 17, they're on 30 points. So that's how the top 6 look at the moment in the Premier Division.
And the bottom, well, we talked about leagues within leagues, and it does look like we can see a little clutch of 4 sides who are going to be battling it out at the bottom of the table. Bridport, Chipping Sodbury at the moment, they're in 21st place. They've played 19. They've got 10 points. That's exactly the same number of points as Odd Down, who sit above them, but Odd Down do have 3 games in hand. Wellington have also played 19 games, and they're on 11 points. So that just gives you an indication of how close it is between the bottom 3 in the division. Bridport sitting just above them in 18th. They've got 13 points from their 20 games. Now, 4 points above them is Roman Glass St George, but Roman Glass have only played 15 games, and unless I'm proved to be wrong, I think that probably Roman Glass will be looking up rather than down. So it might be that the ones to watch at the moment in the Premier Division, fighting it out at the bottom, are Bridport, Wellington, Odd Down, and Chipping Sodbury. Moving on to the First Division, of course, this season, Tom, top 4 have earned themselves a promotion place. Who currently sits in those positions?
Yeah, indeed. So the top 4 at the moment, we've got Longwell Green leading the way. 16 league games they've played, and they're on 35 points. Carlton also played 16. They're 3 points further back on 32. And then Sherborne also 16 games played, and they're on 31. So a further point back. So there's 4 points covering the top 3. We've then got Radstock sitting in the 4th position at the moment, and they've played 2 less than the top 3. So they've played 14, and they're on 28 points. So they're still in a good position. Then you've got the likes of Wales, Wincanton, and Ashton and Backwell just behind that, chasing the top 4.
Yeah, it's all bunched, isn't it? I mean, all really down into mid-table, to be honest with you. In recent seasons, of course, we've seen clubs coming from quite a way back, haven't they, when they've been able to put in a good run of form. So really, that division is still very open. But at the bottom 2 are looking like they're cut adrift. Bristol Telephone still sitting at the bottom in 20th place. They've got 5 points from their 17 games. I, of course, watched them the other day. I was pretty impressed with them, and we've had some quite positive things said about them from some of the managers on the podcast this season. So perhaps they're still in with a shout, but they are going to have to start getting some points on the board pretty quickly. And sitting just above them is Bishop Sutton. They've played 14 matches, and they've got 8 points. 5 points ahead of them are Hengrove, who sit on 13 points from their 15 games, the same number of points as Devizes Town in 17th, who've played a game less, and Almondsbury just above them. 5 points further on, Almondsbury and Portishead, they're both on 18 points. So, yes, leagues within leagues, as we say. Right then, Tom, thank you very much for taking the time and the trouble to speak to us this week on the podcast.
Pleasure.
We have been, of course, reviewing your excellent bulletin. And where can the listeners find that?
That is on the Toolstation Western League website. There's a tab along the top which takes you to the most recent one, which comes out generally on Sunday lunchtimes. You can download that as a PDF and a Word form in Word format. So yeah, that's every week recapping and looking ahead to the games that happen in the Western League.
Excellent, Tom. Thank you very much indeed for your time, and I look forward to catching up with you on next week's Toolstation Western League podcast.